Hello and welcome to another Elementor tutorial. I'm Shane from Lonely Viking and I'm super excited about this one. Today we're going to be looking at doing global styling inside of Elementor using CSS, and I'll go a little bit into Sass. If you don't know what that is, you will by the end of this. We're going to look at global styling in Elementor with CSS and Sass using a WordPress plugin called Microthemer. I am basically in love with Microthemer. This plugin is incredible for CSS. It saves me hours and hours every week, and so I'm a huge fan of Microthemer. And so we're going to look at that. As you know, as you may know, Elementor recently got theme styling, which is the beginnings of global styling for Elementor. Now, it doesn't cover everything. And so this technique that I'm going to show you is actually a way to handle as much or as little as you like on a global level. And so before I get started, I do want to say that Chris Castillo, who runs a Facebook group called Supercharge Your Web Agency, is the first guy who I saw doing something like this. Now, Chris does it using npm, so Node and Gulp, and actually compiling the Sass into CSS in the command line, I assume. And so we're not going to do that. Okay, we're going to do a much easier version using Microthemer that basically anybody can do. But I just did want to give credit where credit is due. Chris is the guy who recorded a video on how he does this, and so the first place that I got the idea that this was really actually possible was from Chris. So check out his Facebook group. I did hear rumors that he was going to be releasing a course for how to speed up Elementor development and also how to speed up Elementor sites, and this global styling is one of the major things that he's going to go through in that course. So I don't know, I haven't actually spoken to Chris about the course, so I don't know when that's coming out, but I would encourage you, if you see this video and this excites you, that would be something really good to check out. Also, his group on Facebook is a really great group if you run a web agency or if you're a web freelancer, particularly using WordPress, Elementor, Oxygen, those kinds of things. Cool. The second thing before we get going is that I haven't planned this out. So I've done a project using this, an internal project for something that we're working on at Lonely Viking. So I have tried it, but I haven't actually planned out this tutorial. So I hope that it goes smoothly and it's not too I wish I had done that, or that kind of thing. So I did just want to say that. So let's jump into Elementor. Did I forget anything? I did write some very loose notes over here. Nope. Okay, so let's jump into WordPress and Elementor specifically. So if you see here on my screen, I'm in a site called Lonely Viking Sandbox, and that is on our lonelyviking.dev domain where we do some development stuff. And I've created a page called Elementor and Microthemer, and I'm about to show you how we can do some global styling using those two things. Firstly, I'm going to go down here to the bottom left, and I'm going to set the page layout to Elementor Canvas, and that's going to get rid of this, the header and the page title, and update that. So now all we're going to do is drag a few, let's make a column over here, a row, and it's got one column in, and then we're going to drag a few widgets in here. So let's start with just a heading, and we can make that an H1, and then let's duplicate that. Duplicate is Command D, but it seems like the shortcuts are not really working so well since the latest update. I don't know if that's just me or if that's a thing, but so you can duplicate by right clicking saying duplicate, or you can press Command or Control D on your keyboard. Now it works, I have to do the first one manually and then, okay, so I'm going to just change these H3, H4. Now the reason that I love this global styling thing is, I think I just did H4 twice, is that you can, when you drag these elements out, they can be styled immediately how you want them to. So you could clone a site and then just change the CSS or Sass file and it will update the styles globally, which for me is a very exciting prospect. Okay, so I've got all of our headings H1 to 6, and if you're not sure what I'm doing, why I'm doing this, hopefully it will all become clear soon. Actually, I'm just going to rather do this, it's quicker. Okay, let's see, what are some other, I'm going to do an inner section here, and I'm going to bring some buttons in, and I'm going to delete this one, and then I'm going to duplicate this. See, now I duplicate and it's got no content in, so that's very weird. Yeah, I must say I've been having a little bit of issues with the latest Elementor, especially with the copying and stuff. So see, if I pressed Command D, it didn't copy the contents, but if I go copy paste, then it does. So I'm going to do 5 buttons here, and then I'm going to set this, that's default, I'm going to set this to info, success. I'm not going to spend too much time showing you this, but I'll go into a project that I have done and we can have a look at what I've done there in a little bit more detail, especially the Sass side of it. So what Sass is, if you don't know, is I don't know if I'd call it a language, but let's call it a language. Okay, so it's a language that you can write CSS in, but it actually compiles to CSS, so you can do things like write functions and you can do loops, and so you can write a lot less code which compiles into like a whole lot more CSS, and you can do some really cool things, and I'll show you maybe 1 or 2 of those things once I'm done here with showing you this. Okay, so we got some buttons. What else can we put in here? Something like a, let's go for an icon box. Okay, so we've got our icon box, we've got our buttons, and I'm just going to put a little space here because I like space a lot actually. So yeah, that's cool. My business partner, who's a developer, says when he's building sites now with Elementor, he adds a bunch of space and then what he thinks is enough, and then he adds 50% more because he knows I'm going to tell him to add more space. So space is very important when you're designing, but that's for another video, right? Let's give this a top padding and that. Okay, so here we've got our page, we've got a few Elementor items on, and like I said, you can make this as comprehensive or as simple as you'd like. So any element that you think you might want to style globally, you can add to one page, and as I called this page, Elementor and Microthemer, and you can then go and add all those things to your page, and then in Microthemer we're going to do some global styling. I'm going to show you actually quickly how you would do this without Microthemer, and why Microthemer is so awesome. So I'm going to click here at the bottom to preview my changes. So we've got this, right? Now let's say you wanted to find the CSS classes and stuff for all of these things. if you're in Chrome, it kind of works the same in Firefox. You right click on an element and you click on inspect. You'll see, okay, let's go into mobile view. Here's where you can toggle mobile and regular view, just up here on the top left of this right column box thing. And so that's brought up this, which is called the inspector. You can see all the HTML code here, this orange and blue, and then just below that over here where I'm scrolling on the bottom left, this is all the CSS. So as you can see, I have selected this H1 and the class is Elementor, heading title Elementor. And so this is how you can find the CSS classes if you want to write your own CSS file. And then you can go, if you wanted to, and put this into the custom CSS. So here's our, let's see, where does it have? Let's say we wanted to edit the size of an H1 tag. Now there are ways you could do this just in your theme or actually in the Elementor global styling. So it's probably not a good example, but see on the bottom left of this right side column, I'm just copying, and if I paste this in the CSS, and then if I change this, let's change it to 62 so it's very obvious, and you see my H1 tag changed there, right? So that's how you can find your CSS elements, classes and stuff. There's a word I'm forgetting, it really annoys me, but that's how you can target and you can write it in the custom CSS here. I'm going to show you a better way how to do this. Okay, so let me close the inspector and I'm just going to click over here. By the way, just a quick plug, I'm using Page Builder Framework on this and I love that theme. We use it for like 99% of all the WordPress stuff that we build. And so if you're looking for a lightweight, fast, awesome theme, check out Page Builder Framework. It's the best. Okay, so I'm just going to click here on Microthemer and you'll see what's going to happen is it's going to open in this, at first might be a little daunting to see this, right? But I'll go through it quickly. So here's a preview of our page. It's got some rulers for measurements. Up here you can see these tabs. I can then view these at different breakpoints. So there's mobile, tablet and phone, desktop and tablet, large desktop, and you can add these as you wish. Oh no, I went out of it. How did I do that? Okay, so okay, let me do this again. Okay, there we go. Alright, I don't know how I clicked out of that, apologies for that. But here's our page, here's where we can see our breakpoints. That's the word I was thinking of, selectors for classes and IDs and that. These are selectors. So I'm not going to go too in depth into Microthemer, maybe I'll do that in another video. But you can do a whole lot of things in your view here. You can actually enable Elementor, and so let me show you how that looks. It will actually load the page in Elementor, and then you'll have the Elementor widgets on the side here, so you can drag them in and work on them as you like. You can view your generated CSS. As you can see, there's none because we've done nothing. You can view a full code editor if you want to, which is now just above here where you can write your code. Which is the way that I do it. And you can see here it says CSS. There's a way to do Sass, and I will show you that in a minute. I'm going to turn the full code editor off. I'm going to show you what's super awesome about Microthemer. So right when we were in Chrome, straight in Chrome, I right clicked on an element and then we could see it in the inspector. So Microthemer has something similar, but if you see on the top left here, you click on this button that says target, and that brings up our HTML over here, and we can then hover over all of these things and we can select the things that we want to select, and it's very granular. So let's say I selected this button here. Right now it's given me some different classes here I can select, and I did that a little too early, and you'll see it's created something here called .elementor button. So this is if I wanted to edit all my Elementor buttons, and so you'll see if I click on this and I hover over this little icon here that says highlight selector, can you see all the buttons are highlighting? So this will globally affect every button in Elementor, which is really cool. And that's this class here, .elementor button. So let's say for the purposes of our website, we wanted these all to have that like pull, or we'll say capsule look here. Now here in Microthemer is where you set all of your different CSS rules for the selector that you're targeting. So right on the left hand side here is a code little icon where you can write the CSS yourself. So if I wanted to say border radius 50 pixels, then I've made my little pixels, then I've made my little radius, my buttons into pulls or capsules. But I'll show you, if you're not into writing CSS, you can do it as well. So let's go through these quickly. Here's where you edit your fonts. Here's where you edit your text styling. There's a list. This is for shadows. This is for backgrounds. This is for gradients. Here's for dimensions, padding and margins, borders, flexbox, grid. This grid thing is amazing. I'm going to do a separate video on that. It's absolutely incredible. Positioning, animation, transitions, and behavior. Okay, so you can do all of these things and pretty visually. So we've got all of our buttons selected here, and we want to make those into pulls. So let's go to border. I'm going to click on border, and you're going to see here I can change the color of my border, and I can do it one at a time, or I can link all the fields. We can give our border a width and a style and all of those things. But for this, we're interested in the radius. And you can see it's telling me what the style is currently, but it's gray, so that I know that it wasn't set here in Microthemer. This is set by Elementor. And you can see these buttons have a 3 pixel border radius. So now I'm going to click to do that on all of them, and I'm going to say 50 pixels here. And you can see there that is now globally made all of our buttons look like pulls. Okay, so that's a super cool way to do that. Now obviously if I reload this page, let me update. Microthemer, by the way, just saves. You just make changes and it just saves. So that's what I was doing wrong. I was running that in a preview, and so now that I saved this, it updated the preview page. So what I'm going to do quickly is go to WP admin. I'm going to reload this quickly while that loads, and I'm going to go to pages. Wait, yeah, I can go to, no, let me go to pages, and I'm going to say view, and I'm going to click on Microthemer. Okay, now it won't change when I, so here you can see our global styling for these buttons has saved. And if I pull a new button in, where's the button? Okay, so now if I pull a new button in, it's the pull shape by default, right? And I can change all my buttons globally. This gets way more exciting when you start using Sass, and I'll show you why in a second. But okay, so we've turned those all into pulls, and there's so many things over here that we can change. One other cool thing about Microthemer is that you can make folders for all of your different selectors. So if I click here, you can see it's got general, header, main menu, and you can make a new folder. You could call these Elementor widget styles, whatever you like. You can rename that, and then over here you can take that one and move it. Can I move it? Yes, I can. I just have to actually grab it. You can move that into widget styles. Oh, got to open that. There are a few little quirks, but okay, so now it's in Elementor widget styles, and when you create a selector, you can drop this down and select which thing you want to put that style into, actually while you're creating the style. Okay, let's style this icon box quickly. Target, I'm going to hover over this, and now I've selected the icon box icon itself, but you can see here, if you go into the CSS, you can find like the whole box. Okay, so let's say we wanted to give this box, so this is called Elementor widget container. No, that's the one I want. Elementor icon box wrapper. And you can see here on the right hand side, these numbers tells you how many of that element there are that it would target if you selected that. So Elementor widget container and then div, they're going to be 6 of them. You see, because these widget containers with divs inside of them is all of those. But I'm going to go for icon box wrapper, and I'm going to put it in Elementor widget styles, and I'm going to, oh, by the way, if you click that, you can see the actual class selector, and if you do that, you can give it like a name that tells you what it is. You can change that to whatever you like. So click create selector, and now let's say we want to give this thing like a card background. Okay, so we'll go to background, and let's give this a gray background, light gray, and let's give it some padding and margin. We're going to give it padding. I'm going to connect all of those. Let's say 30, and we're going to give it a border radius of 5, and we're going to give it a drop shadow. So we got text shadow there, and we got box shadow over here. Okay, so we're going to do let's do 2, let's do 5. We're going to blur it by like, I don't know, 18, and we're going to set the color to like a nice let's go with like a navy blue, and then drop the opacity way down. So now we've given that a card, right? We've given it a card background, and so we'll see over here, if we go back into Elementor, I'm just going to reload it. Yep, reload. Now that's obviously got the styling, and if I was to create another section so I can move this out. Okay, I'm actually going to take that margin off that I gave it, and so now we've got that card. So if I bring another one in, icon box, where's the icon box? Just search. Sometimes you just can't see things, it's crazy. Okay, so if I bring another icon box in, it's going to have the same styling applied to it. And so that's how you can do the global styling, is you pick an element, you decide how you want it to look for that site, you make all the changes, and then anytime you bring that widget in that site, it's going to look like that. Then if you clone that site and you have your microtheme available and you want to change the icon box for that whole site globally, you come into microtheme and you change it. So over here we could say if we want this background color to be like a really dark gray, we'd say okay, and then we want to go and change our text color. We want that to be white. Okay, we would have to target the heading separately and the icon itself separately for the colors. But if we go to view our generated CSS, you can see now it's given Elementor icon box wrapper that style, and it's got all the styling there. And if we wanted to change anything, we could just come here, we could change padding to like 80. Oh, we can't change it in there, sorry, but you can view it here. You can change that to 80, and that's going to make the padding bigger, that kind of thing. So the possibilities are endless. I think you get the gist of what I'm trying to show you here. So what I'm going to do now, I think, is jump into a project that I have been working on that I'm using Sass. And let me just show you quickly how to enable Sass. So you go here to General, on the top right here, go to Preferences, go to CSS and SCSS, and click on Enable CSS. And then we're going to say Save Preferences. Now you will see if we go to Generated CSS, it's got a new tab for SCSS. And so this shows us the compiled CSS, and this shows us the Sass that we can write. And to have a look at Sass, we're going to jump into my other project, and we'll see what the differences between these two tabs are. But this part's very cool. If you have no interest in Sass, you can basically jump out now. But if you want to see what that is, then stick around and we'll have a look. So here we are in my other project, where I'm building like a base site that we're going to use to clone, and then we're going to just when we want to change variables, or when we want to change, widgets and styling globally, we will edit the Sass for this, and I'm going to show you how that works and why Sass is so cool. So I'm here in the Elementor page, which is essentially the same page that the same way that I showed you the other thing. We've just got a page and I've dragged in a whole bunch of Elementor widgets. And so let's jump over into Microthemer. Now there are two ways you can do this in Microthemer. I've got SCSS or Sass enabled over here. So when I create these rules visually, like I showed you in the last project, Microthemer will create Sass. And so you can go ahead and keep doing it the same way that you did it, like I showed you before, where you go and visually change all of these things, and it will update in these widgets. I have been actually writing this stuff in this full code editor. Sorry about that. And as you can see here, where I've just been writing the Sass. But if you go, you can create all of these rules. And so in some instances where it was easier for me to let Microthemer create the rules, I went and did this to find the elements, and then I copied that CSS and I put it in the full code editor and then disabled the styles over here. And then eventually I'll go and remove all of these. It's a little bit of a convoluted way of doing it, so I've kind of resorted now to just finding the targets and then writing the Sass. So for the rest of this, I'm just going to show you the code editor. And one other thing that is cool is you can dock these panels to different sides. So there I can have my code editor over there, or you can dock the visual thing left or you can actually detach the preview, which is what I usually do, and I have it on 2 separate screens, but I can't do that for a tutorial. So that's very cool. But let's jump into the code editor, and I'm going to show you why this is so awesome. So essentially the way that Sass works is you can create variables which house your like colors or fonts or whatever, and then you can use those variables later on as you write your Sass code. And so the first part of the file is all just creating variables. And so you can see here I've made a body background color. If I change that, it changes. Okay, that's a hideous color. But it changes that background color for the whole site. Because later on I've given the body tag color variable, well, color rule this variable. Okay, so then I've created some global colors and named them like this, and then I've created something that's called a map, where I've mapped those colors to these names, and we use the maps later on. I'm not going to go into the details of Sass in particular, but if for those of you who do use Sass, that's what I've done here. I've created a map, and then I've also created a map for Elementor's default colors, which I've applied to these buttons. And so if I change one of these variables, these top buttons are Elementor's default ones, and these buttons are other buttons that I've created. If I change like this hideous orange one, which is color 3, I think, let's say I change that to like another hideous color. Okay, you see it just changes. So that's cool. A very cool way to show you how the global thing works very powerfully is probably at the typography. So as you can see, I've created a variable called heading base fonts, and then I've applied that variable inside of all the headings. And so if I change this to, let's say, Playfair display, you can see it changes all the headings. Here I have a line height, which I can change. If I change it, you'll see the spacing gets bigger. I've got a font base size, which if I change, you'll see this paragraph text changes. Actually, all the text changes because it's all based on that base size. So you can see here I've taken font base size for the heading, and you can do calculations in Sass, which is cool. So for H1 I've said font base size, which is 16 pixels multiplied by 2.75. So that's why if I change this, everything gets smaller, and if I change it back, everything gets bigger. So that's super cool. Another really cool thing, let me show you quickly, that's powerful about Sass is you can write like functions, and so you can do cool things like Sass can figure out like how dark or light a color is. And so check how cool this is with this section at the bottom here. You see it's this red color and it's got white text on the background. Now I created a little like rule thingy function inside of the Sass that this text color changes based on the background color, and I'll show you how that works in Elementor here quickly. Let me scroll to the bottom, select this section, and you can see here I've given it this class BG secondary, which means it's the background is the color secondary. If I change this to primary, you'll see that changes to primary. The text stays white because the background is still dark. If I change this to color, oh no, let me change it to light actually, because that'll make the text black. Light, the text is black. If I change it back to secondary, the text is white. So you can do some super cool things like that, which is why Sass is so powerful and I really love it. See, like you saw, I changed the global font. You can change that stuff based on that. Another cool thing is you see these buttons get darker and they desaturate a little bit as you hover. Let me go and show you that quickly before I do that. A mixin is something that's like a code snippet. So you can write a bunch of CSS inside a mixin, and then later on when you're writing your CSS rules, you can call that mixin, and the way that looks is like this: @include, and then you call the mixin, and this mixin, I've got a parameter in there. So when you say @include, that's going to include all of that mixin text in there. Okay, so this is where I've created those background colors. You see BG dash, and then I've gotten from the theme color map. That's why I could say BG primary, it would change it. BG secondary, it would change it. So for these buttons, for example, here I've created this mixin called custom button, and it changes stuff on these buttons based on that. And so if you have a look here, this is giving the rule on hover. So this is the element background color, and then it's telling you what to do with that background color when the user hovers. And there's background color, and then it's going to do this function called scale color, and it's going to take the color variable and the color value. It's going to desaturate it by 30%. It's going to darken it by 20%. So when I do that, you'll see that's what's happening. If I make this 100, those buttons will go completely gray when I hover over them, because I've desaturated them completely. If I want them to be much darker, I can say like 80%, and then they're gonna all basically be black, right? Okay, I'm gonna show you one last thing that I've done, and that's create like padding and margin rules. And I'm just going to show you over here. I've created this like loop which takes the theme spacing map, which I've created further up, and it creates these classes. And so it says p dash, and then creates the class based on the theme padding that is in the map, right? Sorry, if you know Sass, you'll probably know what I'm talking about, hopefully, if I'm speaking the correct language. If you don't, it's just cool to see what this does. So I'm going to explain to you now what this does. This has output a whole bunch of CSS. Let me go and show you quickly. If we go to view generated CSS and Sass. Okay, so this is all the Sass that I've written. And so you can see here it's done. This is the loop we were just looking at that is creating all the padding CSS. Now if we go to the CSS tab and we look for the setting padding classes, you'll see how much CSS there is compared to how much Sass there is. Right, I think this is where it is here. No, yeah, here it is here. So we've got all of these, and this is how much CSS it's created for padding. I'm still going. All of that based on that little bit of Sass, which is cool. Now I'm going to show you that in action. So let's select an element over here. I'm going to select maybe this. Let's select this column, because that'll be cool. And if I go to advanced and I go here to classes, I can say P, see the padding change there because I took that rule away, P, X, and 5. Now that's taken my base padding value, which is 20 pixels, it's multiplied it by 5, and it's applied it to the X, to the left and right. If I change that X to Y, it's going to be top and bottom. And if I just change it to P5, it's going to be all around. It's going to be 100 pixels, because it's our base value of 20 multiplied by 5. If I make that 0, we're going to have no padding. If I make it 1, it's going to be 20. That's going to be, I don't remember what value I multiplied it by, but as you can see, as we go through 4, 5, it does that. And I think I got one called extra large, or large. There we go. which is probably like 150 pixels based on that. So you can see there's some super powerful things you can do with Sass and global styling in Elementor. There's so much that I want to show you, so much I want to talk about. I really could make this like video super long, but I'm going to cut it short over here. I think you get the gist of it. If you do use Sass, hopefully this gave you some good ideas. If you don't, it's definitely something worth looking at. And also, if you just want to help writing or creating CSS in a visual way, Microthemer, I can't praise Microthemer enough. I really love it. So that's that. I hope you got something out of that. I hope it was valuable. If it was, please like this video. If you think other people will like this, please share it in the Facebook groups that you're in. That would be huge for me. And one quick thing, I do have affiliate links down below for probably most of these things: Elementor, Microthemer, page builder framework. So there are also non-affiliate links, because I don't want to like trick anyone into using my affiliate links or whatever. If you don't want to use them, just click through, no worries. But if you do want to support and you are going to buy, then I would really appreciate it if you use the affiliate links. Yeah, if you like the content, subscribe to the channel, and thank you so much for watching. I will catch you in the next tutorial. Cheers.